national champion in college football history raised the trophy last month. Indiana University is a national champion program.
Specifically related to this conversation says so much about culture, what the coaches who brought a lot of their players over to Indiana knew what they were looking for and knew their capabilities and worked with them, knew who they were inside and out.
I don't know how many times I was told that Colston Loveland coming out of high school would have been a 5-star recruit if he was in Georgia, if he was in Florida, if he was in California. But in Idaho, that just wasn't the case because they couldn't get as many eyeballs on him.
Welcome to X Factor. I'm your host, Simon Clemens. Today, we're sitting down with a panel of high school and college football coaches to talk about both sides of the recruiting process, where development happens, where evaluation happens, and why athletes with similar talent can end up with very different outcomes. Recruiting isn't a straight line. What high school coaches are responsible for day to day doesn't always line up perfectly with how college coaches evaluate and make decisions. My goal today is to help athletes and families better understand that dynamic, how development turns into recruiting, where the handoff can break down, and how each can work together to help athletes achieve their goals. Let's start by meeting our panel. Today, I'm joined by Jim Kraft, Associate Head Coach and Offensive Coordinator at Pacific University in Oregon, Cameron Andersen, the Head Coach of Burley High School in Burley, Idaho, and Shannon Currier, the Head Football Coach at De La Salle High School in Minneapolis and former Head Football Coach of Concordia St. Paul in St. Paul, Minnesota. Welcome all. Jim, would you like to kick us off and just kind of introduce yourself and share a little of your background to get started?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Simon, for having me and fired up to have the discussion here. I've been coaching college football and NCAA-sponsored programs for 26 years now, 16 in the Big Sky Division I FCS, where I've been, just about every offensive position, from coordinating across all the different positions, offensive line, tight ends, wide receivers, quarterbacks. The only thing I haven't really coached yet is running backs, and especially special teams coordinator as well. I've also been a recruiting coordinator and associate head coach, so kind of had my fingers in the pie in many different areas of football programs. Currently, I'm in my 5th season at Pacific University, west here of Portland, Oregon, Northwest Conference, and this is to be my 9th season in about 3 different stints of NCAA Division III football. So over 26 years, 16 in Division I, 9 in Division III, and all kinds of different perspectives.
Awesome, Jim. Thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate you joining us. Shannon.
Hello. Thank you again for including me as well. I've been in college football for over 30 years. I've been a head coach since 1999. Just finished the 10-year stint at Concordia University, St. Paul, Minnesota Division II school. And I was just calling them up. I've been at 6 different Division II programs, most in Minnesota, 5 in Minnesota, 1 in Missouri. And I've gained a lot of different perspectives from that experience. Primarily worked on offense. I became a head coach when I was 28, so I had really good opportunities early on. Now 55. Definitely my philosophy of coaching has changed and grown. And also the other thing I would like to indicate too is I recently got trained for mental performance training. I received a certification for that. And I think probably some of the questions you're going to ask, there's a lot to do with the mental performance element. As we recruit kids to college football, that mind game is really something we're trying to evaluate. And I think a lot of people miss that part of it, but that's my experience so far.
No, and Shannon, I agree with you. I think it's one of the hardest things for athletes to understand. And, the earlier that we're able to make them see just how important the mental components of success are, the better off they're going to be. Cam.
Yeah, I'm Cameron Andersen, head coach at Burley High School. I was the head coach at Gooding High School for years and ran one of the more successful programs in the state, and then decided to take on a project. And it's been a lot of fun to work to rebuild something here, and coached a lot of really talented high school players. Been really blessed to do that. Over the last 15 years, we put, I think, 47 kids into college from Division I all the way down to Division III, and lots of NAIA in this area. But feel really, really blessed to be in this profession, and excited to get into the discussion of these players and how they're getting recruited.
Yeah, no, Cam, I appreciate that. And Cam's being modest. He was Colston Loveland's head coach, played at Michigan, and just had an amazing first season with the Chicago Bears, my hometown team. Also, Gatlin Bear is currently a recruit who's at the University of Oregon. But that said, I think that, a lot of this conversation is actually going to be about all the other kids and where they ended up at those different levels, because every high school coach that I know is committed to trying to get their kids, opportunities to play at the next level. And I'm hoping this conversation gives gives the athletes and their families a little bit better sense of, kind of how high school coaches can work for them and how college coaches interact with high school coaches to get the recruiting mission done. Gentlemen, I did want to just start out with kind of a fun one. We just saw the most unusual national champion in college football history raise the trophy last month. Indiana University is a national champion program. And one of the things that really stood out to me in watching that story was that they had no five-star recruits. Meaning that out of high school, none of the players on the national championship roster at Indiana came in with a five-star rating. Now, for those of us who've been watching college football for a long time, we are used to Alabama has 30 five-star recruits playing for them, or Clemson has whatever. And this group was really unusual in that regard. So, Jim, we'll start with you, but I wondered if you could comment on kind of what is that signaling and what can that tell us about talent evaluation at the high school level?
Well, I think, specifically related to this conversation, says so much about culture and, what the coaches who brought a lot of their players over to Indiana knew what they were looking for and knew their capabilities, had worked with them, knew who they were inside and out. And it just goes to show you the trust, culture, system, all of those pieces a lot of times overcome just straight talent. And, obviously that coaching staff, the head coach has done a fantastic job building all of that. But he knew a good handful of those players very personally and known them since they're 18 and took them to a place where, some of those players probably never imagined they could be. And so a ton of respect for the player buy-in and the coaching system. But also goes to show you that, coaches who have a model of culture that they're looking for specifically in their program when it comes to recruiting can do a lot with so-called a little when it comes down to stars.
Yeah, I mean, I think it does testament to the ultimate team game too, right? If everybody moves together in a direction, we can accomplish great things. And it seems like Cignetti was able to accomplish that. Cam, I'm sure you were watching that story as a high school coach. That must have validated a lot of things that you've worked with over the years. You specifically have dealt with a lot of the rating system, I know, because I've seen some of the high-star recruits that have come through your program. And I'm just curious, from a high school coach perspective, how does that all kind of come to you? Like, are you aware that they're going to be at that level? Are there kids that you think, hey, this guy should be there, but the rating systems don't even get there? Or, you know what I mean? Like, so what's that look like from the high school coach perspective?
It's a really good question. And I think first and foremost, I think with the Indiana thing, it's an element of recruiting that's missed by high school kids and coaches quite frequently. Kurt Cignetti and his staff are amazing evaluators of talent, and not just of talent, but of talent that are fit for their scheme. They're masters of personnel. And that's one of the elements that's missed so much in high school recruiting is so many kids want to go and be a thing, or a wide receiver, a DB, a something, when colleges are evaluating so many other things and they're trying to find a fit for the scheme that they run. You got to be a personnel fit before you are a scheme fit. You have to really, really fit in those types of things. So Kurt Cignetti is just excellent at evaluating talent and knowing how that's going to fit into what they do. There's also other elements that I think are huge to that. But as far as like the recruiting stuff, it's kind of funny. So much is who you know over what you know. I don't know how many times I was told that Colston Loveland coming out of high school would have been a 5-star recruit if he was in Georgia, if he was in Florida, if he was in California. But in Idaho, it just wasn't the case because they couldn't get as many eyeballs on him. He did not go on the camp circuits. He did not go to Rivals camp or Under Armour camp. He did not go to any of those types of things. He lifted weights and trained with his Gooding football team and us. And he worked on his craft because we knew from our experience of working with recruiting, the most important thing was that he was able to execute our scheme at the highest of levels to have really good film that was out there. So his star rating never came up. With Gatlin, of course, he's the highest rated recruit in the history of Idaho and was a high level 5-star. I think he finished in the top maybe 15 in the country, and second in his position only to the guy at Ohio State who's going to be a first-round draft pick or number 1 pick when he comes out. He's the only wide receiver rated higher. And I'll never forget, there was one college coach who, when he was a 4-star, who said, hey, if I call this company or these companies and tell him to bump him to a 5-star, will he commit to our school? That was something that was said to me. So, and he tried. He did make those calls, and then Gatlin went to the Army All-American game and just wrecked it. So that's what got him bumped up. But so much of it is are you paying to go to these camps to be seen? Are you paying to go to Rivals, Under Armour to get these star rankings? If you're not going to those, well, you can't even get in their database hardly, and then you're not going to get those star rankings. The college coaches, of course, they have to care about it a little bit, and the data is getting better because there's really no diamonds in the rough that aren't found anymore. Like, there's no one hiding in a place because huddle and film and all those types of things. So what are you putting on film? And if you execute a high level of on film, what's the data that's tracking you? What's your grades? What's your attendance? What's your family life? What's your home life? What do the secretaries, the lunch ladies, and the janitors say about you in the school? And then also now a lot of modern metrics. We digitally track 40s, flying 10s, weightlifting with bar speed, verticals, and then we track weight with those things because it's becoming so condensed. You've got to be able to demonstrate to them because of, I know we don't want to talk about a lot, but because of the portal, they have to demonstrate in high school that they are as ready-made as possible because they don't have the time to develop that kind of a kid. So that's why I think that the 5-stars, the 4-stars, all that type of thing are important to big schools, to the major brands, like you mentioned. But for someone like Indiana, they're more evaluating talent after they've made it into those and didn't make it, but they can get them into their personnel fit.
Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting. Shannon, as I brought up at the beginning, you're transitioning between the two. And so now you've got a high school that you're in control of. And when you see a story like Indiana, like, how does that change your perspective and what your thoughts are about how kids are moving and ratings, et cetera, as you get your new program going?
It just really makes me want to pay attention to everything Coach Signetti says. All his videos I like to watch. It shows you the importance of culture. You've heard from Homer Smith, one of the most successful basketball coaches. He talks about, like, in math, 2 + 2 = 4. In a team setting, if you have more than 2 people, 3 + 3 + 3 could equal 9. It could equal 6 if you have, every single person in your program is either making it better or worse. So that sum is going to change. And obviously what they're doing in Indiana is they're getting a high sum, from the kids they're bringing in because those kids are making sacrifices for their team. And they're upholding standards. Like, a lot of times we all have standards, but the first time you let a standard slide, that's now your new standard. So they just have done a great job of upholding those standards, getting quality kids. And look at Mendoza when it was 4th down and 7, like, the desire that kid demonstrated. And so they're recruiting those elements as well. They're recruiting guys that are mentally tough, that are committed. And how do you get that accomplished? I've just learned, I met with John Stiglmeyer, that former head coach at South Dakota State last spring, 2-time national champion FCS coach. But there's a lot more questions that coaches are asking in the recruiting process. The better ones are asking questions of student athletes about, hey, after a loss, like, how do you respond? And coaches are looking for kids to take accountability first. To be, self-reflection. So people are really trying to find, like, what's the mindset of these kids, because, mindset's perspective, and coaches are trying to learn what are the perspectives of these kids, because that alone is going to indicate, like, how good they can become. 2 of the best players I had at Concordia just recently, when we watched their high school video, they're twins. They're 6'5" and 215 pounds. They're kind of gangly, and we didn't offer me scholarship money. They walked on to Division II. But the first year they were there, they did everything asked of them. They were in a weight room all the time. They did extra stuff. They did all the nutrition asked of them. They read books that we asked them to do. They were in scripture we asked them to get into. They became the leaders that we wanted them to become. And in a year's time, they both became stars on a team. In my transition to De La Salle here, one went to University of South Dakota, and the other one went to Northwest Missouri, full scholarships. So they really have improve their financial status. But there were kids that weren't there initially. They had no other offers, but they stay committed to the process. And I think, the Signetti and staff are finding kids like that are going to improve the team, sacrifice for the team. And that trumps talent all the time. And the stars are sometimes, who's determining the stars? It's certainly not the Signettis of football. He's an expert. He does it all the time. It's people that are running these camps and things that don't have the same ability and evaluating as maybe Kurt Signetti does. So the stars aren't obviously very consistent.
I don't know if Signetti would want you to know his star system, frankly.
No. Yeah. But I can guarantee you Signetti's looking at the mental element, the commitment, leadership, those things that Coach Andersen mentioned. And I think kids don't understand that enough. The high school senior doesn't get, they think it's all about their video. But that's just part of it. It's really part of it.
And that's what I want to get into next. I mean, I was actually, we could say, ratings are a snapshot. And I think the points have been brought up that, if you go to the right place and get seen by the right rating system or whatever, you can get additional stars added or whatever that is. And that's going to be part of the recruiting process, but not for everybody. And actually, Coach Kraft is somebody who's leading a team out on the Pacific Northwest Division III football. I'm sure you're not recruiting too many 5 stars to Pacific. What I'm kind of curious and would like to get in, sure, you can look at ratings, and I'm sure you have a great network of people that are passing you information on players and giving you a signal through your network of who to take a look at. But, what do you, when you first see a prospect, what are you evaluating first? What's the thing that makes some kid, kind of click in your head and you go, what, Pacific could use this. This is a kid that I want to spend a little more time evaluating his film and kind of start that process more fully.
Yeah, absolutely. The starting point at the Division III level is really not too different than the starting point at the Division I levels. When you put the film on, can they impact your Saturdays? Can they make you better in that position room? Can they help you win football games? So initially, that doesn't change whether you're the head coach at University of Oregon or you're the head coach at Pacific University. You're watching to see, can this guy make us better physically in where we are in that room right now, or where we are, in that position, so that part of it has got to be the standard and the starting spot. From there, though, the Division III level, and even if you want to look at Division I AA or FCS football, the best recruiters have to understand their market and their thread, so to speak, which means if I was at Cal Poly and I wanted to chase the division, the Minnesota linebacker, 3-star linebacker, who is a tremendous football player, but how am I going to beat how many schools from here to Minnesota to go get that guy? And is it going to be better for me to recruit closer to Cal Poly, where I can find a similar guy in my backyard at a school in California that produces great football players that I'm building relationships with? So, as an example, all those programs have to find their thread and find their yieldability. And in Division III world, I mean, that's a huge question, because, there's a lot of guys to sort through, and you have to find which ones are specific, for your school. So for us specifically, can you help us win championships? Is there an academic fit where what we offer is enticing and valuable and meaningful for the student athlete? And are they capable of success and reaching that goal if they come to Pacific? And then the character piece is the next thing for us that check the boxes: football, academics, and then heart, head and heart. Are they competitive, driven? We call them compelled student athletes. And do they love football like we love football? So those things are the processes that our recruiters have to go through. The yieldability piece tells me, how much of your film am I going to watch? I'm not going to watch a lot of 4.0 Division III wide receivers from Florida when I'm at Pacific University. They might be great for my football program, but how am I going to get that young man from Florida to Oregon when there's probably a lot of yieldable talent in the Pacific Northwest? And it is a starting point.
All right. So, Cam, I think one of the interesting things about the high school side of this equation is you get a kid, you're probably starting to track them in 8th grade, and you have them during this amazing development window where you have a lot of access to them. So as Jim's talking, I'm just thinking, well, one of the challenges the college coach perspective is all these snapshots. You maybe you go to Friday Night Lights. What do you see? Do you have, that's a snapshot. Whereas you're in the weight room with these kids every day. I just wonder from your side, maybe 2 kids come in and same height, weight, same size, whatever, very similar. Where do you start to see those 2 players separate? Like, what are the characteristics that you start to see a kid take on that allows him to step ahead of at one time seemingly very similar player?
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, the mindset would be the first thing that separates them. Are they results or process oriented? If they're process oriented, they always have a higher ability to succeed. What I mean by that is their goal to get stars and likes and offers right now and as soon as they can. And is that going to drive them in how they work? Because the problem with results oriented businesses, especially the way it is now, or kids or athletes, is you're not getting a lot of those offers unless there's something spectacular about you. And so then you don't work as hard because you allow the results to drive your work ethic and the way that you go about things. It also shows up on film and on tape when you're results oriented, because you're not giving all that you have on every single play. If you're a wide receiver, maybe you're not going hard on a route when the ball's not going to you. Maybe you're not blocking your tail off, or and a lot of those things that coaches can see. Whereas a process-oriented guy is just going to go, like, they are so focused on what they can do today, because they know that if they are giving everything they have today, the results will show up in the end. And so if you can find that, when I think about the elite athletes that I've coached, and then other kids that I've coached that are similar size, similar build, similar background, similar demographics, all of the things. The one thing I know about those kids is that they had an absolute commitment to the process of what it was going to take to be successful. I couldn't get Gatlin to take a bite of a cinnamon roll. He wouldn't do it. And it wasn't that he was like, Coach, I can't do that because it's going to make me gain weight. It's that he had wired himself to the point where he looked at me like, why would I do that? What? Wait, that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't align with what I want to do. And so when you talk about guys, or Colston, me talking to him about how he lifted, and he would lift 3 times a day at different muscle groups and be limping around the high school as the best athlete that high school's ever seen, because it was the process. It wasn't about, he skipped senior prom. He skipped basketball season because they weren't in alignment with the goals that he had and the process that it was going to take to attain those goals. So I think the number one thing is mindset. I mean, there's nothing had without sacrifice. So how many small decisions, not big decisions, how many small decisions every single day are you willing to sacrifice? And is your mindset that which it's not really a sacrifice? Like me not going out with the boys and staying up till midnight. Do you see that as like, gosh, I hate this because I'm not going out with my friends? Or is it just, no, I'm in bed at 10 because that's what the job is, and that's what I'm going to get done? Am I turning in every single assignment, not because I have to get that 4.0, but because that's what I'm expected to do? How you do anything is how you do everything. And those kids really live by that mindset. So when colleges come through and talk to me about those different kids, like Pacific University, I'm sure they have guys around that they know they can trust because they've given them honest evaluations on kids. They've given honest talent evaluations. They know from coaches that, like, I'm honest with coaches. A coach comes through there right now. I've got a pretty high-end recruit in Burley. He's a sophomore, and he's got the potential to do great things. And so, like, for example, Oregon was in here this week and asking about him. And they're like, should we take him? I'm like, not yet. He hadn't in there yet. Like, he hasn't established to me the things that will make him successful for you. And they trust me because I've given them that honesty and done that thing. But kids need to, as a high school head coach, I have to be honest with my kids about that very thing. I'm going to be honest. So if I'm not seeing the things in the weight room, I'm not seeing the commitment, I'm not seeing how you're treating the people around you, I'm not seeing the leadership qualities that are there, and I'm not seeing you being a process-oriented, driven kind of player. When those start to show up, well, then we can start to talk to those guys about those things. If they want to play, there's a home somewhere.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
So it's about all of the other things. Because when Coach from Pacific calls me about a kid, he already knows about the football. He already knows. He doesn't need to know any more about what the football player he is. It's all the other things.
Okay, so that's interesting. So Shannon, yeah, again, I kind of keep ending these points with you as the guy who's kind of moving now and framing a new high school program. But, obviously Cam shared a lot there. Jim shared a lot there. As you transition now into the high school role and, are building these teams and having access to these kids every day, what lessons are you taking that you think are going to apply and how are you going to be helping these kids with their moving to the next level?
Yeah, first off, I'm trying to help them understand just what Coach is saying, like how important the mindset is and the work ethic, because the difference that we do have a bunch of ninth graders right now lifting. Some are a little bit more urgent. They want it more. They're more focused on details in the weight room. Some guys are in there to go through the motion. So those are things that just scream at you. So I'm trying to build rapport with parents as well. I have a parent meeting next week because to Cam's point, like we have to be honest with these guys. Otherwise, when we do have a legitimate player, they're not going to believe us. It's like if you go to the fruit tree, the apple tree, and every time you get a bad apple, you stop going to that tree. And some coaches aren't as honest about where that player might be at. So it's just important for me I definitely be an advocate for the guys. And we have a role as coaches to get that information to the coaches, helping them with their Twitter account, helping them put their huddle link together, their clips, and what that should look like. So there's a lot of things we can do to help them, but ultimately, their performance and the way they go about their business is going to be the reason why they get recruited. You can't buy recruitment. I think a lot of parents are looking we all want to help our kids the best we can, but it's about their performance in the end that's going to get them recruited. There's nothing you can do to buy that recruiting process. You can't pay for an offer. And to his point, the process versus outcome is one of those mental performance elements that kids need to learn. Like they need to get focused on how do they spend their 24 hours in a day. And we talked to them a lot about AM and PM routines because from 8 to 6, they might have school and practice. But what are you doing in the morning before school? What are you doing at night before you go to bed? There's where you can maybe tweak your process to, if it's recovery, if it's reading. I'm a big believer in reading because it takes your mind to other levels. You start to fill in. Hey, read about David Goggins. He was overweight. He was lazy. Oh, he went from being that to a Navy SEAL. Then he went to run ultra marathons, 150 miles in a day. Then he broke the world record in the pull-ups. Then he started running 200-mile races. So all of us can develop that mindset. And I think reading is one of the most important things you can do. And we talk a lot about doing a lot versus a lot of little. So like, hey, can you do 10 pages for me daily, every single day? That's way more important than skipping a few days and doing 50. So we're trying to help these kids create these habits that can, just like your money in the bank creates interest, so do your habits. And I'm a big believer too, and all the coaches, you hear it all over, but how you do one thing and how you do anything is how you do everything. So as a college coach, we looked at academics because that showed me right there, like how good does this kid really want to be? If he's happy with a 2.3, he's not going to have the detailed work ethic in the weight room either. And his professor's probably going to think he's a slouch just the same. And if his girlfriend's honest with him, she's probably wondering what she's doing with him. So, we really try to, make these kids recognize how one part of your life, how you go about that it's the same in every part. And we just want kids to pursue their best in every element. But those are some things that, that we're focused on.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'd love to hit on what Coach Andersen said because I kind of mentioned that towards the end of what I was saying with, can they help us win football games? Are they going to come here and compete academically and thrive in our academic competitive level? And then my last piece, when I talking about compelled and driven, humans, what Coach Anderson's talking about, that mindset, and coaches, maybe you can tell me if this is the right way to phrase it. I'm asking high school coaches a lot, is this a guy you want to keep in your program? Would you like to coach him a few more years? And trust me, it's not like, are you trying to get rid of that guy? We all have it as coaches where, man, my time with that young man was too fast. That 4 years is over. I would love to keep coaching that dude, because that competitive, that mindset that coaches are talking about, when I find those guys that love football the way that we do, they're as competitive as we want our locker room and our weight room to be. A lot of times coaches tell me, like, you can't go wrong with this kid. I wish I could keep coaching this young man. That will bump up their evaluation of what they do on the field. Sometimes that's where it's like, okay, that guy's climbing my board, and I don't care if he's 6 foot and the guy ahead of him 6'1" or 6'2". You know, I want those guys that a coach like Coach Andersen and Coach Currier are saying, like, man, this is the heart and soul of my program. That's absolutely what we're looking for.
Well, that's interesting, because I was actually going to come back to Cam on this one, and I think kind of just right into the next question, honestly. But Cam, you've been a high school coach for years. Like, where do you think high school coaches can add the most value to the recruiting process?
First, just he had mentioned, is it the right question? I think it's absolutely the right question. One thing I really learned when Jim Harbaugh was here and talking to me about Colston and Gatlin, he asked a question in a very specific way that I loved, and it's similar to that. But he said, when he leaves this program, what type of example did he leave for the ones that were around him? And was he the kind of leader that those kids would follow it? So it's the similar kind of idea. Like, would you want him to come back? And that, to me, demonstrated so much. Like, this is the way that he was, that brought about leadership. And this is what we've already seen from kids that worked with him that are coming back next year. And so that's I think it's a really good question.
Well, and you're hitting it. That's why there's talent pools, right? Like, the programs that build just like a repeatable level of success, particularly at high school. I mean, I think what's interesting about the Indiana example, that's its own thing, because this is happening in, we know, hyper-competitive college athletics, schools with millions and millions of dollars. But every single state has a high school that is successful, and it can't be because all of the Vikings moved to that city 200 years ago and just breed college-ready football players. There's something else going on in that, and it's not the water, right? Usually it's a coach with a culture, but maybe more importantly, it's kids that leave an example of, this is the expectation here. This is the work necessary to achieve at the level. And this is, if you do these things, nothing's guaranteed, but you're going to be in pretty good shape to take things to the next level.
Yeah, it's super important that they had something that they could look at. I remember my grandpa, he's a legendary coach in Idaho. He told me, you're not a leader until you've made a leader who's made a leader. And so, like, when you look at those things go about, and I had a conversation with one of my players last week, and I looked at him in the eye and I said, you watched Gatlin Bear work out. When was the last time that you saw him work out like you worked out today? And the day before, when you worked out as hard as him and your teammate didn't, when was the last time you saw him accept a teammate working out that hard? And so when you can instill that kind of thing and get it flowing throughout the program, well, then you get movement, right? It's about getting that first follower, which creates movement. Leadership is lonely. First followers add to it. And then when you get a movement, things can really start to get to go. To answer your question on what can we do, one is understand the landscape. Boise State actually brought some staff members into my office, not to recruit, but to ask ideas that I could give them on how to better educate the coaches in the state of Idaho about what the recruiting process is now. Like, there's in any given year in the state of Idaho, there's maybe 3 to 6 kids that could play at Boise State's level, maybe 1 to 3 that could play at Oregon's level. That's just the facts. It's just the way it is. But every single kid that's coming through thinks that they are going to be the next Leighton Vander Esch and make it through Boise State and walk on. Well, that walk-ons aren't even a thing anymore with the new scholarship limits. So, like, how can you truly educate? So for one, as a head coach in high school, educate yourself on the realities of the process. Educate yourself on the realities that your kid, who is first team All-State and the best player on your team and maybe the best player you've ever coached, is also 5'6", 160 pounds. That does not mean he isn't your great and best football player. It just means that's what he was a fit for what you did, and he's not going to be a fit for what they do. So understand what they need. Ask coaches questions about what they're looking for and how they're evaluating. 2, help them understand that football is football. It is. And playing for Pacific can be just as gratifying as playing for Boise State or Oregon. And if you are that good, the NFL will find you at Pacific just like they will at Boise State or Michigan or anywhere else. That's just the facts. So educate your kids that it doesn't have to be this thing. Just be the best version of you. And when those guys come after you, well, shoot, let's go after them. And then let's go prove it. And let's go demonstrate who we are. If we're that good, they will find us. That is unconquered. They will find you. They at Pacific. And 3, honesty with the recruiters that are coming through. All it takes is to burn yourself once or twice for a university by saying, this kid is, I know he's 6'5" and he's this, and he is the hardest worker I've ever had. And he's had all the, and if those things aren't real and they sign that kid, you have burned a bridge for so many kids that you are going to evaluate going forward. You just have to be honest. You have to be honest with those kids, with their parents, like Coach Currier said, those kids, those parents, and the coaches about what you are seeing. And if they want to change the narrative, they have every power in their ability to change that narrative. But they don't know what the narrative is until you are honest with them.
Shannon, number one thing that you're going to take in terms of, like you're building this, you're communicating now on the other side of the conversation. You're working, working the phones maybe in a different way. You've talked a lot about culture. It sounds like, is that your number one install right now? We always talk in football about the install, but it sounds like what you're telling me is culture is the install. Once we do that, we can do anything.
Absolutely. For sure, culture. But my goal would be is just to help, to Coach's point, help these kids be the best they can be. And that's by all the habits. We talk a lot about gratitude every day, getting them reading, getting them doing affirmations so they can affirm their mind and what they're capable of becoming, being consistent, and then, teaching them to express, how was practice, why was practice good, what can be better, what are your goals, just getting them to do some reflection daily. So that's a word, that acronym's GRACE. And then life, we talk about love, mental imagery, faith, and then exercise, which is your cleans. I'm a big believer in cleans, hang cleans. I think that's the number one lift for football players that relates to the field. And a lot of coaches don't do it. I was helping a young man last night on a call, and he's working hard, but he doesn't do cleans. I'm like, if you want to really take your game to the next level, you don't just jump into the clean. There's some shoulder shrugs, there's some rack pulls, there's different things you can do to lead up to that, but there's a safe way of teaching cleans. But in my opinion, and talking to former athletes, that's the one lift that translates to the field the best. So I'm going to get those guys as strong as I can. I'm going to develop their minds so they want to be great in all aspects, help them be really good academically. At this school, we're a big basketball school. There's 4 Division I prospects on the basketball team. A sophomore has 7 offers right now, but 3 of them academically aren't in position quite yet to get to where they need to go. So you got to take care of business in the classroom too. So just helping them understand all that's going to take in recruitment, and me being a former college coach, I think I can bring that perspective. And then the other way I can help them is, this is how you recruit. Get on social media, get on Twitter, create yourself a Twitter account. You can DM the offensive coordinator, the receiver coach, the recruiting coordinator. There's 4 people at every program that you want to attack. It's like a job. This week, we're going after the NSIC conference. Next week, we'll go after the MIAC conference. And then you'll kind of see like which coaches are intrigued with your video. And I think kids don't know that, but that's the way to go about it, because the recruiting services, we get so many emails college coaches do, but the DMs, there's a lot less DMs coming in the inbox there. And I think as a college coach, we're more apt to respond on the direct messaging, just because it's one of those things where I got a message I got to respond to, and there's only a couple there. But when you got 30 emails, it's a different feel. So the Twitter account is really essential for college football recruiting. So I'm just going to educate all those things, to help them understand all those things, and help them be their best, and trust that their performance will take them where they're supposed to be. And to Coach's point, like, I played Division III football. The kids I coached at Concordia, they wanted to win as bad as anybody else at Oregon or Minnesota. In fact, they probably gained more because they had to pay for school. They had to work. We had 5:30 workouts 5 days a week, just the same. And Division III schools do too. And at the high school here, I'm trying to educate my parents and kids, like, it takes what it takes. There's not really many choices if you want to be great. So, it doesn't matter what level you're playing. If you want to be the best you can be, you got to lift every day. You have to have some sort of workout plan. So just really helping them educate what it takes, because kids, they see the TV, the flash, the game, the Indiana Miami game. They don't understand the grind. And the season's very similar, but it's January, 5:30 a.m. workouts 5 days a week, right into spring ball. You get a little bit of time off, and then June 1st, you're back on campus for 5 days a week of summer conditioning. So, helping them understand really what that grind is and preparing for that. That's going to be my goal.
Simon, can I read something to you? Yeah. This is from Todd Monken today, from his press conference today. He said, Todd Monken is the brand new head coach of the Cleveland Browns. I got to know him when he was at Georgia, when he recruited a couple of our players, but he came from the same elevation tree that the people you see on this. And he said, I think you have to hold players accountable for what they say their dreams and aspirations are. And all you're doing is holding them to their goals and aspirations, like people did for me. I am who I am because my parents did that for me. They didn't do that to me. They did that for me. I think everybody likes honesty until they don't like what's said to them honestly. And I'm the same way. I'm no different. I like being stroked in a good way. I don't like the other side of it. But that's how I've gotten a lot better. And the people that love you the most, they're going to be honest with you. And I think that files everything into what you're asking, like a coach or anyone can do, is to hold them accountable to the dreams and their aspirations. Hopefully you're blessed enough to have kids that are at that level that you can demonstrate and show that to them. But if you truly love them and care about them, because that's what we do, because we're in this profession, then honesty is important.
No, I appreciate that. And I think, one thing I've learned in my 20 years of working with youth athletes is, the kids, I hate it when I have a coach who's like, the kids are the problem. Because I'm just like, that is just, a 15-year-old can't be the problem. We can be a poor leader of a 15-year-old. We can be a poor guide, but the individual themselves is, just hungry to be watered in the right way to grow. So
you're either coaching it or you're modeling it. That is 100% of the time.
Jim, you got a final thought before we wrap?
Well, I mean, no, I was gonna make a comment about that comment. The player's the problem. The generation is the problem. It's so fascinating because you could go back probably since the birth of football or the birth of athletics, and at some point those comments were probably made one generation after the next. And the one thing that stays the same is the world has problems. There are issues. That's not changing. But leadership is what solves problems. And, like Coach Andersen is saying, we're in a remarkable position because we have the ability to help hold kids accountable, hold young people accountable to their dreams and to their goals. And as a coach, if that doesn't fire you up, then, you're probably in the wrong industry. So, that can be a statement that can be made forever, and it probably has been. But the statement is being made by somebody who's not paying attention to their own, job and their own responsibility as a leader.
I think it's 100% spot on. It's a great way for us to end. Gentlemen, I just want to thank all of you. I really appreciate, I could have this conversation for the next 2 hours, honestly. It's been fascinating to hear from all of you. I have a tremendous amount of respect for all of you, which is why I asked you on today. I think you guys are all leaders in a way that, I've had the opportunity to come out and see some of your programs, work with you guys directly. And it is awesome to know that you guys are involved with the Exact family and our work here. The information you provided today, I think, is a great guide for families and athletes who are looking to take the leap, because I think a lot of kids are. And sometimes it's just about direction. Where should I be looking? How should I be approaching it? And I think the information you guys have shared here is really hit on the heart of that, which is at the core, that's what we're all doing. We're all developing kids and trying to let people self-actualize to be their best self. And you guys are all a tremendous part of that mission within your own programs and within the kids that are in the next generation. So thank you all for that. Thank you for being on X Factor, and look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go Boxers.